chat box. There it is. There it is. Hope everyone's having a fantastic Monday. It's bright and early. Ooh, it's bright and early. Some days you wake up and you're like, ugh, I wish I could hit the snooze button, but my children didn't hit the snooze button, so we will not get to hit the snooze button today. Today, we are going to be going through some Matt Affleck quizzes on PokerCoaching.com. We're actually having a big sale right now at PokerCoaching.com where you can get a pretty solid discount. Check it out at PokerCoaching.com/Cinco. You never catch the show live on Monday, says Jason. Well, here you are, Jason. We're here today live. Let's do it. Only one more Monday of school, says Kevin. Congratulations on that. It's always good to get through the year. In the middle of the year, then we'll run it back and do it again and again and again. You ever feel like you're on a bit of a treadmill? I feel like I'm on a treadmill sometimes. That's a reconnection successful, it just now tells me. Well, who knows what's going on today? We'll figure this out. We'll make it work. Is it lagging or is it just you? Oh, it's definitely just you, Timothy. No, I downloaded a video again, LOL. No. I was just on the wrong internet. We'll hang out for a minute while this all comes back. Are we up and running? Seems like everyone's a few seconds behind. It is perfect now. There are two different internets. One of them is not as good as the other one, but it's like the backup internet. I don't know why there's two internets. Just make the good one good. Andrea, good morning. Matthew, good morning. It stopped lagging. Good. This is a recorded video, right? Jonathan isn't live, says Free Soul Park. You know, I don't know what weird simulation we're living in at this point anymore, but I think I'm live. Maybe not. You tell me. Keep asking questions. See if this pre-recorded video can knock them out. All right. Today, we're going to be going through some Matt Affleck quizzes at PokerCoaching.com. We have a lot of quizzes. 1,249 at the moment. We upload new ones all the time. Every day, pretty much. As you see, we have quizzes by lots of different coaches. We have Tristan Wade, Faraz Jaka, Evan Jarvis, Matt Affleck, Alex Fitzgerald, myself, Lexi Gavin. Lots and lots and lots and lots of quizzes. Today, though, we are going to be going through some Matt Affleck quizzes. I've not gone through any of these purposefully. I'm not even entirely sure how Matt's going to play these spots. We may get these wrong. Nice thing about poker is it's a little bit subjective, but it's always good to learn from the best. And Matt Affleck is fantastic at poker. We also have lots and lots of classes at PokerCoaching.com. Let me show you this classes tab real quick. Show you all this content Matt Affleck uploads at PokerCoaching.com. As you see here, 20 big blind, early position versus big blind, part 1. Just came out a few days ago, right? Content by Matt Affleck. Live hand history review, okay? GTO concepts, button versus big blind strategy. In-depth marked hands and analysis. Deep run review. Etc. Anyway, we have lots and lots of content by Matt Affleck on PokerCoaching.com. He has great work. I've learned a lot from him. And I'm sure you can too. All right, let's see. Yeah. Is Phil Hellmuth the biggest luck box in poker? It's funny because I actually do think he probably has ran slightly hot throughout his career. That said, he's clearly excellent at figuring out how to adjust in various scenarios. And I think people typically play quite poorly against him for various reasons. Which, you know, people play poorly against you, then the money's going to flow your direction. Aced Flush came in 15th in a $10,000 free roll. Good job, good work. Had you studied the tournament masterclass? Start at the beginning and work your way through it. Go slow. What do I think about Poker Snowy? Check out the YouTube videos. Just search on YouTube, Jonathan Little Poker Snowy. It'll come right up. All right, let's go through some of these quizzes. I have no clue what we're going to find here. Let's see what happens. We'll all play together.
All right, today's hand, we are in the big blind with Queen of Hearts, Nine of Spades with about 20 big blinds. This is in the money of a $55 tournament online on America's Card Room. It's deeper in the tournament, maybe final 3 or 4 tables, something like that. It's going to fold around to the button, who is a loose aggressive regular. And we're going to face a min raise, and it's on us in the big blind. Should we fold, call, or re-raise all in?
Ooh, so I think all of the options besides fold are viable. What do you all think? This is a spot where really it depends on how wide the initial raiser is raising. Okay? If the initial raiser is raising super wide and very importantly, they're going to overfold to an all-in, then we can definitely profitably shove. The question is, should we, right? Like, do we have enough information to elect to rip it all in here? This is also like a fine hand to see a flop with. Like, if I had ace-x, I would definitely shove, right? Because that has a solid blocker to the opponent's calling range. If we had a little bit more equity, something like a pair, slightly better big cards, I think we could shove. To be fair, though, I want to make it really clear. I talk about this in my very first book, Secrets of Professional Tournament Poker, that if the opponent opens too wide and then folds too often, you can just print money by jamming in these spots. I was talking to Jonathan Jaffe, another poker coaching coach, who I beat for one of these trophies back here. And heads up, he said that I crushed him by being overly aggressive. He did not expect me, who is normally generally in line, not too insane, to be, insane. And I was insane heads up against him and was quite aggressive. And that resulted in me winning lots and lots of small pots. If you watched Phil Hellmuth against Daniel Negreanu the other day, you saw Phil Hellmuth get kind of insane for about an hour. And he won every single small pot for an hour. It was insane. Like I couldn't believe that he got to win like every small pot. To be fair, Negreanu didn't have anything. But, it's a spot where if your opponent will raise too wide and then overfold, you can shove really wide. That said, I have to imagine the quote-unquote right answer here is call, but don't think all in is absurd.
I think we just have a crystal clear call here.
We got 10 points, that's good.
It's a min raise. We're getting a great price. We have 2 big cards, which is better when we're on the short stack. And we got a loose opener on the button. Our hand is too weak to re-raise all in. At 20 big blinds here, we really don't want a 3-bet sizing that's less than all in. And our hand is just too strong to fold. I would consider folding hands like queen deuce, queen 3, queen 4 against tighter raisers. I do call.
I want to show you all something real quick. Let's see if I can do this. I don't know if this is going to work well or not. We'll see. We have a note file here, okay? Profit in chips equals, I'll show you all an equation. Percent opponent folds times pot plus percent opponent calls times equity in pot minus amount put in pot. Okay? This is a math equation to figure out if going all in is profitable, and it'll tell you how much it is profitable for. Let's go through and do this real quick. Profit equals, how often does the opponent fold? I don't know. Opponent's loose aggressive. Let's presume, using Equilab, opponent's raising 65% of hands on the button. Too wide, okay? Too wide. Too wide. This is about 65% of hands. You think this looks reasonable for a loose aggressive player on the button? Maybe a little wide. Let's make them a tiny bit tighter than this, I guess. They really aren't going to be much tighter than this, though. Maybe they do this number. So this is 60% of hands, okay? Which hands are they going to call our all-in with for 20 big blinds? That's the question. We see here 60% of hands they're raising with. I know it's kind of tiny on your end. Sorry about that. Let's presume they're going to call our all-in with, for 20 big blinds, remember, pretty big all-in. Let's presume they're going to call it off with this. 20% of hands. You see this? 20% of hands. So that means they're going to call us a third of the time. So how often does the opponent fold? 67%. They fold 67% of the time. We're going to give our opponent this range. times the pot we win when they fold. 19 plus 9 plus, well, let's get a calculator. So I'm going to screw this up. All right, we have 19, 200 plus, what was our big blind? 9,600 plus small blind plus big blind. I'm sorry, plus ante. This is how much we win when they fold. 44,400, okay? Plus percent opponent calls is 0.33 times equity in the pot. We take our opponent's calling range, this, apply, run our queen 9 against it. Our equity in the pot is 36%, okay? 36% equity when we get called. So we have 0.36 times what the total pot would be. Let me rewind it here. Total pot's going to be our entire stack plus our opponent's call, right? So that is, we'll call it 195 times 2 equals plus 15 from the blinds and antes equals 405K. Okay, 405K minus the amount we're putting in the pot, which is 195. Okay, here's our math problem. Okay? Do you all like math? If you all like math, click like and click subscribe, please. I would appreciate it. Let's do some math. 0.67 times 44000 equals. So now we have profit equals 29480 plus. Now we do this. We do the stuff in the parentheses first. 0.36 plus 405,300 equals, oops, I did that wrong. 0.36 times 405 minus 195 equals times 0.33 equals minus 16,236 equals plus 29480 equals 13,000 chips profit by shoving. Okay? If we shove here, assuming my assumptions are correct, maybe they are, maybe they aren't, then this is what happens. People are saying we're having video issues today. There should have been no video issues for the last 10 minutes. I was on the wrong internet for the first 3 minutes of the show. It says I have 0 drop frames for the last 13 minutes. Okay? Hopefully there are no video issues. So anyway, assuming these assumptions are correct, then this is what's happening. Now, let's say your opponent raises 40% of hands and calls the top 20%. This number here would then be 50%, and this number here would be 50%, right? Let's just actually go through and do that. We would do 0.5 times 44400 equals 222, 22200 plus equity is going to be roughly the same. Times 0.5 equals minus 24,600, which equals a basic loss, right? You see, though, even then, this is not like horrible because when we call, it's not like we're printing loads of equity. So the question is that if we know shoving is probably going to be somewhere between profiting a big blind and a half, which is kind of a lot, and roughly break even when the opponent raises kind of tight and calls off appropriately, then shoving is definitely fine. Like, it's not absurdly bad. I think this is a spot where a lot of people get it in their heads that, you know, calling is clearly the GTO play, which I agree with, assuming the opponent plays good GTO poker. But a lot of people just don't, especially if you tell me this guy on the button is kind of loose, kind of aggressive. If they expect, let's say, the small blind to be a little bit too tight, then they should raise a little bit wider, right? And also, will your opponent actually call off with this for 20 big blinds? A lot of people don't. There are a lot of people who raise something like 80% of hands on the button and then call off with this or a little bit tighter. If they're calling off with this or a little bit tighter, then you're just going to smash them by shoving, because then this number here on the front end of the equation is going to be 0.75, right? So that's going to make this like plus 20K or something, which is a lot. Why is 0.33 and 0.36 in the formula? Okay. Percent the opponent folds. How often do they fold? That is their calling range percentage divided by the total open raising range percentage, We had them raising 60%. Here's their calling range of 20%. 20 divided by 60 is 1/3. That means they fold 2/3 of the time, right? They call a third, they fold 2/3. They fold 2/3. They call 1/3. Okay? That's where those two numbers come from. Like I said, if they open 40% of hands on the button and they call with 20% of them, it'd be 20 divided by 40, so that would be 50-50, right? If they open 40% and they call with 30% of hands, that would be 30 divided by 40, which means this front number would be 0.25, right? So that's how you get that. How do we get the 30.36 number? We take our opponent's calling range, this, right? And then we run that against our hand. Actually, I have queen nine suited there. Put all queen nines. You click calculate. It's actually 35%, whatever. So we see our queen nine against their shoving range when we get called has 35% equity, which is how we had this number here. It was 36 if you have queen nine suited. Sorry about that. Slight error. It's not going to change things much. Then this is the total pot when we get called minus the amount we are putting in the pot. So our equity when we get called is essentially like this whole number, right? We're losing money when we shove and get called. And so essentially this front end of the equation tells us how much we win when the opponent folds. The back end of the equation tells us how much we win, or in this case lose, when the opponent calls, right? Because when you shove queen nine and get called, you're obviously behind. You do the math, and essentially the way it works out is if the front end of the equation, if this number here, this 0.67 is big, like kind of close to 1, you can shove really, really wide. And like I said, Matt said here the opponent's loose and aggressive. Maybe they're opening wider than the GTO 50% of hands or whatever it is, which is what I presumed. I presumed 65, 66%. Or no, I presumed 60%. And that results in us having a 1.5 big blind profit shove, which is like a lot. You're not going to profit a big blind and a half by calling. So if your opponent actually is loose and aggressive, as Matt said, I think shoving is probably better. That said, also, though, we are in the money in a tournament. You want to minimize the chance to just go broke in spots like this. So there is merit in, quote-unquote, surviving. Okay? That's why the second number is negative. Yeah, second number is negative because this is when we shove and get called. We basically broke this situation down into when we shove and they fold, and when they shove, we shove and they call. The problem is it's hard to know how much we profit / don't lose by just calling. But as you see here, even if it's like 50-50 here, if your opponent's raising 40% and calling off with 20%, you're breaking even. And like breaking even in the big blind is actually pretty good. Okay? You thought Jonathan Lowe was coding. Looks like coding, but no, not coding. Don't know how to code.
At 20 big blinds here, we really don't want a 3-bet sizing that's less than all in.
That's for sure.
And our
don't
hand is
3-bet
just
small.
too strong to fold. I would consider folding hands like queen deuce, queen 3, queen 4 against tighter raisers. I do call. And the flop comes 8-6-5.
Oh boy.
Should we check, bet 15,000, bet 25,000, or bet 40,000?
This is a fun one. I want to ask again, how do you study the tournament masterclass? Like I said, start at the beginning. Take it slow. Go through the quizzes. Make sure you fully understand everything there. Something I've been working on is leading with a very shallow stack. Playing around with the GTO solver, you'll see that against early position raisers who really don't connect with this board whatsoever, you should be leading some portion of the time. However, we have a problem here, and that is that the initial raiser is on the button, so they should have a relatively wide range to begin with, and their raising range connects kind of well with this board, right? Like if we go back here and give this player 60-ish% of hands, right? And the board is 8-6-5. 8-6-5. What is going to actually fold to our bet? Right? If we just go through here and look at 8-6-5, what's really going to fold? Almost nothing, right? Like I'm just going through here and removing hands that just have total nothing. Everything else is like ace high or a pair, right? So the opponent's actually going to connect with this board here pretty decently, 75% of the time, because they open so wide, right? Notice all these hands with a 9 have a gut shot. All these have a pair, an open-ended straight draw, or a gut shot. Ace high, I presume, is not going to fold. And pairs, right? Is this a lead against under the gun? I don't know, maybe. The thing is like, what is under the gun raising, right? If we go back over here and adjust for an under the gun range, if they're like kind of tight, maybe they open, I don't know. Let's presume they do this number, maybe. Notice here, this is 17% of hands. If they fold out everything that doesn't connect, that leaves them folding 1/3 of the time. 12 divided by 17 is 2/3. They're going to call, so they fold 1/3. And even then, like ace 10's not in great shape. So, you see that you're going to get way more folds against under the gun here than you will against a loose button opener, right? So anyway, I think I would just check. But like if we were shallower, as you get shallower and shallower, leading becomes a more viable option because you just don't care if you go broke in a lot of spots. Whereas whenever you're a little bit deeper, you have to be a little bit cautious when it comes to leading out of position. Anyway, check. Whatever.
So I feel like people just auto check here
Spicy.
way too often. And as you get shorter stacked from the big blind, these low connected boards, and when I say connected, I mean there's a straight possible, are very good boards to lead out with certain hands. Now, as a general rule of thumb, versus a late position open, so here we're against the button, you want lower boards. So something like 5-4-3 or 6-5-4.
Very, very good point here, right? The Matt's making that this board may not be the most ideal board to lead for the reasons I said, right? Like going back to this guy opening 60%, what are the best boards to be leading? It's going to be boards that contain these low cards down here, right? Because notice the opponent doesn't have them, whereas we do have them because we defended the big blind with all this suited junk and the low connected stuff, right? I mean, like, look, in terms of hands you want to lead, in general, gut shots are really, really good to lead because they don't really want to check call, and they also don't really want to check raise. And they can reasonably bet and then fold to a raise. I'm not sure you actually want to bet and fold this particular hand, though, because you have gut shot plus 2 over cards, which is pretty good. So I don't know. We'll see where Matt goes with this. I think this is... I don't think you necessarily want to have much of a leading range in this spot purely because of the read of the initial raiser. Right? The guy's raising from this widest spot on the button, and this type of board connects with those additional wider hands, right?
Because this board in particular, the button still has hands like 9-7 suited, and like 8-6 suited and 5-6 suited.
Maybe 9-7 offsuit if they're raising 60% of hands, right? You see, if they raise 60% of hands, you see the 9-7 offsuit, 8-7 offsuit, right? You see, these are the hands that start getting added as they get, quote-unquote, more and more loose aggressive. So maybe Matt's read, maybe I took his read to be more than he took it to be, right? Because like I would presume 9-7 offsuit's in like every loose aggressive person's button raising range. But if it's not, then obviously my logic starts to fall apart because that hand's not in their range anymore.
Potentially. So they do hit this board some, versus if this board was against under the gun player never really has a lot of hands to hit this board.
Mm-hmm. We
so
talked about that.
The later position you're against, the lower you want the board to be to start leading. And against earlier, like even against under the gun, you could start potentially leading boards like 9-7-5, like 9 high or 10 high boards where they don't hit that range as hard. Now, as an exploit, I think people play very, very weakly against leads. They don't call enough. If we bet small here, which is what I like here, if we bet 15,000, we're giving the opponent very, very good pot odds, and it's going to be hard for them to meet a minimum defense frequency and defend enough hands here. So
Let's talk about that real quick. Remember how we showed you just a second ago, they're going to fold, assuming they call ace high and better, they're going to fold 25% of the time. When Matt bets 15K into 55K, he needs to pick up this pot. 15 divided by 70. So he needs to win this pot 20% of the time, 21% of the time, assuming he has no equity, right? So if your opponent is going to fold out 25%, and we just showed you they need to defend at least 79%, we're just going to print money because when they bet and we get called, we also have equity, right? When you bet in the continuation bet, we are planning on check calling or check raising. We are not folding this hand, by the way. Like I said, some of the best hands to lead are hands that have additional equity. You wouldn't want to lead just like king 2 offsuit here. That'd be ridiculous because it has relatively little equity when you bet and get called. But I like this. It is important if you are going to bet. When you are leading, you very often want to lead very small because that just takes advantage of the opponent's random king high, queen high, jack high stuff. You do not want to lead big because then the opponent just has to play kind of straightforward and it becomes okay. Matt also mentioned that as a general exploit, you want to, like you can overlead because people don't play well against it. A lot of people do not realize you're supposed to call here with like any backdoor flush draw. and you're supposed to raise here a decent amount of the time. The thing is like, say we lead and the opponent just calls with Jack 8. We're going to crush them in this scenario because we get to realize our equity, right? If we improve, we make the best hand some portion of the time. Whereas if we lead and they raise, all of a sudden now it becomes pretty miserable. So as your opponent raises more and more and more against leads, as they should, if you look at GTO strategy, you actually should raise a lot here with a pretty polarized range. Whenever you're facing the lead, if you're not getting raised, you can lead substantially wider than if they will call or fold every time.
I like betting 15,000, and it's a very, very cheap bluff. I would be betting it with hands, really, really strong hands, like, some sets, some straights, some 2 pairs, and a lot of these hands that don't really want to check call, but are too strong to check fold and don't want to check raise. So exactly hands like this, Queen 9, potentially a hand like King 4 of clubs, a Queen 3 of clubs, something with an overcard, a backdoor flush draw, some type of gut shot straight draw. And so I think this hand works really well as a lead. And it's as an exploit, I think population is going to play very, very poorly. They're going to overfold, and they're going to start to play their range very, very face up. They don't bluff a lot, and it works really well as an exploit.
I like it. Sounds good. So look, in reality, what would I have done here? I probably would have just checked this one a lot, which very easily could be wrong. But I would be check raising here a lot, right? Like I'd probably be check raising the Queen 9. Like Matt said, you don't really love check raising the Queen 9 because it has decent equity. If your opponent, again, he said the opponent's loose and aggressive. Maybe he's presuming they're not going to be all that aggressive facing a lead. Could be true. Could be incorrect. I don't know. If I was going to develop a leading range here, I would start by using some of the other hands that Matt referenced that are a little bit weaker, like Queen 4 of clubs. I think that's a very nice hand to lead because it has bad gut shot, plus overcard, plus backdoor flush draw. It's going to give you a lot of barreling opportunities on the turn. I think hands with a 9 are reasonable, but I think hands like an overcard and a 4 are the hands I would first start to lead. He also mentioned leading some nut hands. The question is which nut hands, because you can't lead all the nut hands, because if you lead all the nut hands all the time, it makes your checking range really garbage, right? So what are the best hands to lead? Usually it's going to be hands that really don't want to let it go check. So which hands are pretty good but really don't want to let it go check? Type it in the chat. Let me know what you think. Hello from Israel. Good morning. Good afternoon for you. You just bought Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em. That book right back there. Hope you enjoy it. Should you read my previous books before this one? No, I don't think so. I don't think you have to. Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em it's like a more advanced book, I would say that. If you're new to poker, definitely get Mastering Small Stakes No Limit Hold'em first. But if you are already playing like online a lot, playing decent stakes, then Excelling at Tough No Limit Hold'em games is the book for you. If you all like my books, by the way, while you're typing in which hands you would like to lead here for value, check it out on Amazon, on D&B Poker, and go leave a review. I would love if you all would leave me a book review on Amazon. I would appreciate it. Also, click the like and subscribe buttons. All right. Tom Turbo says 6-5. I love leading 6-5. Ace Flush says Ace-8. I think that's reasonable. 10-9. 10-9 is not for value, Timothy. So you all are typing in bluffs. No. I'm saying which are the best value hands to lead. Because you don't want to necessarily lead a hand with a 7. Because if you lead a hand with a 7 and get raised, that's terrible, right? Because then we basically have to play for all of our money with a straight draw. So in this scenario, I think the best hands to lead for value are going to be 2-pair. Why? Because there are lots and lots of bad cards for 2-pair, right? Like say you have 6-5, any 9, 8, 7, 4 are all like really bad. But these hands are very, 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 very high value, and you can bet them and happily get your money in. I think 8s are like fine to lead as well. You are not folding if you lead with an 8. But I like 2-pair in this scenario. I think that's a very, very solid hand to lead.
So I do bet about 15,000, 14,000 here.
I want to make it clear, too. If Matt expects to get raised here, like ever, leading becomes pretty bad. But like you said, people aren't doing a whole lot of raising over leads.
About quarter of the pot. And I think this sizing works really well. It forces them to defend with hands like King Jack of diamonds. And most opponents are just going to play very poorly against this. So I
forces them to defend actually wider than stuff like King Jack and diamonds, as we showed. If it forces them to defend every backdoor flush draw and every ace high, and maybe even stuff like King Queen, King Jack offsuit. It's a pretty nasty spot, actually. They should probably raise with stuff like King Jack offsuit here, actually, because it doesn't really play great as a call. And your opponent's going to want to raise with good, strong value hands, like a lot of the overpair type stuff that's almost certainly good. And they also want to raise with some just total junky bluffs. They don't really want to raise with hands containing a 9 or an 8, because if they raise with a 9 or an 8 and then get jammed, I'm sorry, a 9 or a 7 for straight draws, right? They don't necessarily want to raise with 9s or 7s here, because if they raise and then get shoved, it's a really bad spot for them, right? So in this scenario, they should be raising really polarized with stuff like overpairs, good top pairs, and some total air balls like King Jack that have some equity when they raise and get called.
I do bet small, and our opponent calls, and the turn is the deuce of diamonds. Should we check? Bet 26,000, bet 42,000, or bet 60,000?
Well, I already know I have my triple barrel shoes on here. I don't know what Matt's going to do. We want to figure out how to get all in by the river, so I guess the answer is 40. Opponent calls. There's 160 in the pot. We have 120 left, right? If we lead 26, this is a spot where we will produce fold equity, again, kind of like on the flop. But we don't really set up a great river shove, because if we bet 20, pot's going to go to 120 and we're going to have 140 left. Maybe that's fine. That could be fine. Louis Philippe says bet pot. You know, Louis Philippe is in charge of our study group, and I bet Louis Philippe knows the answer here. I'll tell you why I don't love pot. I don't love pot because if we bet pot and get called, I'm not sure if we need to keep barreling the river. Opponent should definitely call stuff like ace-9, ace-7, any pair. And if we bet and get jammed, it's actually kind of bad because we're getting pretty good odds. I don't think I'm in love with leading pot. I think I would go 42K. I think 42K is nice and reasonable. So I'd like to do that with my good made hands. I think 42K is what I would do.
So the deuce of diamonds comes off. Well, first, let's analyze that. The opponent just called. Most opponents are going to play pretty face up with their hands like 8-6 and 5s and 6s and 8s. In overpairs, they're not really going to slow play enough. They tend to fast play. So our opponent really is lacking the top end hands, which we can have now. The deuce is a complete brick. None of his hands improve, maybe pocket deuces. So this is a really bad card for the button. And our hands like 8x, our sets, our two pairs, our bluffs, we get to bet this card again for quite often, and we really are trying to protect against like ace highs, king highs. You're going to have a lot of ace x floats, a lot of king overcard Broadway floats, backdoor flush draw floats. So I really like betting again here. I think betting like 26 or 42,000 are both very, very good options. We don't need to bet large. We're just targeting their like ace jacks, their ace queens, their king queens, their king jacks that they didn't fold on the flop. And yeah, I think these bets are going to work really well, and population is going to play very, very poorly against them because they don't see this happen much. So I only bet 26,000 here, like basically 30% pot, just under 30%. And our opponent folds. And these are very, very like profitable bluffs in terms that they don't have to work that often to be good. And even if he does call, we have a 7 basically to the nuts. A queen is likely good. A 9 potentially is most likely good. So don't just auto check. You're going to be auto checking a lot, but these low straight connecting boards, equities are more closer to 50-50 here. Big blind versus button. So you do get to do some leading on these boards.
When you're shallow. Not when you're deep, when you're shallow. Big caveat. You got to be shallow to lead. Okay, so how does brain fuel taste? Brain fuel tastes kind of like concentrated Powerade. They have a few flavors. They all taste different. I like the blue one the best. Check it out. Brainfuel.com. Use code PokerCoaching, get 15% off. Cherishable girl. Hey. Good morning. I like this lead. As you see, Matt goes small and the guy just folds, right? The thing is like, say your opponent did float king, jack of clubs, right? And then you just keep betting any amount. It's sure is terrible for them. You may say, but what about when they have aces? Aren't you just going to lose your money? Yeah. And that's fine because we have 20 big blinds. It doesn't really make that big of a deal. That big of a difference. Poker is hard. Poker is hard. This is such good content. Well, free your soul park. This is one of 1,200 quizzes at PokerCoaching.com. As you see, click on the quiz tab right here. We have lots of quizzes. Matt Affleck uploads lots of them, as do many of the other coaches. We're actually having a sale right now. Check it out, PokerCoaching.com/Cinco, like Cinco de Mayo. PokerCoaching.com/Cinco to get a big discount. I agree. It's good stuff. All right, let's go through another Matt Affleck quiz. Who knows what we're going to find this time? We almost got all the points this time. It's 10, 6, 10. You want to get 10, 10, 10. All right. You'd love to hear situations where you should lead 100 big blinds deep. You shouldn't. Michael, I'll give you a little tip. The only times from a GTO point of view you want to lead from the big blind is when you are very shallow, such that all of your value hands, like top pairs, you can lead and then just not fold. You got to realize if you're 100 big blinds deep, you can't lead ace-8 on 8-6-5 and not fold it because you're just going to get crushed by your opponent's strong hands. So you only lead whenever you are deep stacked from a GTO point of view. Is brain fuel carbonated? No, brain fuel is not carbonated. Just like Powerade is not carbonated, brain fuel is not carbonated. I don't think Powerade is carbonated. If it is, it's very minimal. There's no carbonation in brain fuel whatsoever. Tastes more like a coconut smoothie or something like that. Like coconut oil smoothie, if you think about something like that. All right, let's take a look at another hand. Let's do what we find.
All right, in this hand, we have 10-9 offsuit in the big blind. We have 10 big blinds. It's going to fold to the cutoff, who's a very good regular, who min raises, and it folds to us in the big blind. Should we fold, call, or raise all in?
All right, previous queen 9 hand, I liked all in pre-flop. I think it's very reasonable. Here, I hate all in. Why? Because we're going to have almost no fold equity. We're going to have almost no fold equity because now the opponent's going to be getting really good pot odds. They're going to have to put in 8 big blinds to try to win 21.5. They don't need much equity at all. Also, this good regular with 20 big blinds is raising into 2 big stacks, right? Who could very easily apply aggression and put them in a bad spot. So this good regular should have a perhaps tighter than normal range in this scenario, I would think. So this is a spot where calling is the only play. Let's see. Kersey Italian Poker says we should fold or go all in. Absolutely not. You picked both the wrong answers. Folding is bad because we are getting very good pot odds. You see our pot odds here? I know they're a little bit tiny. 4.5 to 1. We need to realize 18% equity. You think we're not going to be able to realize 18% equity with 10-9 offsuit? We're going to realize, like, I don't even know how much, but like 30-something% equity here. So we're not folding. All in is not good because, like I said, we completely lack fold equity. If we go back over here to our equation, remember I said the front end of the equation needs to be very positive in order to make shoving wide good. In this scenario, our fold equity is going to be like 10% or 20% or 30%. So this number over here is going to be very low, which means the back end, when we get called, is going to be very high, and that's not what we want because we're losing money in that scenario. All right. Oh, what are we doing? We're calling. Here we go.
I think we have a pretty clear call here. I don't think our hand has enough equity to re-raise all in. We do have some fold equity here against a cutoff range, but 10-9 is just too weak. Versus a min raise here, we're getting a very good price. We don't need a lot of equity, and because we are so short, we get to call more because we are going to realize all our equity. So I really do like the call here.
Notice how I said we're going to realize all of our equity, right? That's kind of what I was saying too. Remember how we needed 18%? We need to realize 18% equity. Essentially, if you make a pair after the flop and it's not like ace, king, 9, you're very, very happy whenever you're playing 10 big blinds deep. So this is a spot where we're going to make a hand and go with it and be very, very thrilled. Stop and go? No, we're not stop and going.
Which I do.
We may stop and go, but probably not.
Jack of hearts, 8 of hearts, 7 of hearts.
Pretty good flop.
Should we check, bet 35,000, bet 65,000, or bet 90,000?
Oh, Matt Affleck, give us a tricky one here, huh? This is an interesting one because I don't know if we want to be leading on this board. Typically, you want to lead when you have big equity / EV advantage. But I don't think that is where we are right now because the opponent has all the ace-x of hearts and we don't. And they have a lot of the king-x of hearts and we only have some. So this is a spot where even though we have a very strong range, I think we can expect the opponent to bet reasonably often here. Then I think we'll probably put in the check shove. That would be my plan. How do you feel after drinking brain fuel? I don't know. Great. Ready to work. Fred says you just got 2 cases of brain fuel. It tastes unique, like a thicker Powerade mixed with Red Bull. I wouldn't say it tastes like anything like Red Bull, but okay. You love the way you feel after drinking it. Yeah, me too. I would look into check shove here, I think, or maybe check raise small depending on what the opponent does.
So you're obviously a very good flop.
I want to make it clear. This is a board where I think we need no leads. Previous board, where it was lower and more lower and better for our range, that's a spot where we need to be leading. Here, this board is fine for the opponent's range. When the board is fine for the opponent's range, that means their overall range advantage is going to be reasonable. And when their range advantage is reasonable, they should be betting very frequently. So this is definitely a spot to check.
First, we flopped a straight with a pretty shallow SPR. This is a spot we really want to check a ton with our hand. We actually don't get to lead on this board a ton, even though we are pretty shallow stacked. Equities are running decently close. I think we're probably like a 45-55 dog. But we really do want to check, and especially these stronger hands that don't need much protection, we really want to check. And in general, I think we can get away with never leading on this board. It's a board that connects pretty well with the cutoffs range, and the cutoff's going to have all the nut flush combos, tons of king high flushes, sevens, eights, jacks. I mean, ace jack, king jack, queen jack. The cutoff is not lacking for strong hands, and we don't accomplish much by leading, especially with this hand. We just want to check and let them hang themselves.
Why do we say the big blind does not have the ace of hearts? Well, I said ace X of hearts, but why do we not have ace X of hearts? Take a second, think about it. Because when the opponent raises to 2 big blinds out of our 10 big blind stack, we're going to go all in with the majority of our ace X suiteds before the flop, which means we do not have those in our range on the flop. But the opponent would not just open jam their ace X of hearts. They would min raise them, right? So the opponent has every ace X of hearts in their range, and we do not. You haven't seen this, right? No, I've not gone through any of these quizzes, as you can see over here. I'm well behind in my quizzes. It actually, if we click refresh here, it'll give you your score on your quizzes. But I've not gone through any of these. Just GTO goes through a lot of the quizzes now to make sure they are all good quality, etc., etc. As you see, we just took this Matt Affleck quiz, you see, and our scores go in here. So no, I've not taken these quizzes. I don't know what's going to happen. So anyway, okay, let's proceed.
We do check, and our opponent bets 40,000, just under 40,000. Should we fold, call, raise to 85,000, or go all in?
Oh, goodness. What do we do here? Do we put in the min raise? So if the opponent bet bigger, it would just be an easy all-in. Like say they bet 60 or 80. Then we just have a very, very reasonable easy all-in. When the opponent bets small, do we click it back? The thing is when you're shallow, you should be clicking it back a lot. Something that you don't really do deeper stacks. I'm trying to think what we want to do in this scenario. I think we probably just want to shove here because whatever the opponent has some equity. If our hand was like more nutted, like ace X of heart or king X of hearts maybe. King X of hearts is a hand that maybe we want to check min raise. But I think we probably just want to shove this one. This is very different than if we decided to check on that previous board, 9-8-6. There we would do a lot of check min raising because we have a lot of nuts. Here, I don't think we necessarily want to do a lot of check min raising because the board connects pretty well with the opponent's range. If they have any jack, they're going to call it off. If they have any good heart, they're going to call it off. And we're just getting all of our money in ahead. So I think the play here is all in. I could be convinced it's min raise though. This is a spot where I'm telling you, very shallow stack, you do want to put in some min raises. The question though is, what min raise bluffs do we want to have that will min raise and then fold? Whenever you have min raises that will fold to a shove, like for example on 8-6-5, we could have queen 4, right? For a bad gut shot plus overcard. That's a hand you could reasonably check min raise and then fold to a shove. Here though, can't really check min raise any hearts. Don't really want to check raise like 10-4 of diamonds, right? So I don't think we have any folds. So I think we just want to go all in.
I really think we should just call with this hand with the
Matt Affleck, you tricky
draw.
man.
I think we want to be shoving. We're never going to have that small sizing, so I don't like the 85,000 with any hand. It's basically a call or a shove. We want to shove with hands that need a lot of protection. So some Jack X hands. We're going to do a lot of calling, and we want to call. We have a lot of hands like King of Hearts 5, King of Hearts 6, Ace of Clubs, 9 of Diamonds. Actually, maybe not the Ace 9 off. We probably showed that pre. But we have like some 7-6 type hands. And we have a lot of hands that don't want to get it in. And we want to call with these types of hands to protect our calling range. Shoving's not awful by any means, of course. It's plus EV. We obviously have a very, very strong hand. But we want some strong hands to slow play here. And we do want to call with pretty much all of our flushes actually, I think, want to call here. We don't want to shove with the flushes. We want to shove with hands like Jack X, hands that are strong enough to get it in now, but also need a lot of protection and benefit from folding out hands. And we don't really benefit from folding out a lot of hands here with the 10 of hearts and the 9 of spades. So I really like calling. I think it's the higher EV play. And I think we need to be patient in these type of spots. These monotone boards tend to play very slow. Not a lot of betting and raising that go on with them. So I do shove. I don't think it's the best play. I think I should just be calling here. This should be a pretty wide C bet still, considering how short we are. And we got a snap fold here. And I think we lost a little bit of EV here by just getting kind of eager, like, oh, I flopped a straight, rather than thinking, okay, we don't need it. The reason we don't need to shove is if we call here, the pot's going to be 230,000. We're only going to have 180 back. So even if it goes check on the turn, we can just shove the river and get all the money in whenever we want. We don't have to raise to get the money in. That would be different if we were deeper stacked. We want to get money in. But when we're so short, we actually slow play a lot because we can get the money in. We want them to catch up with a hand like ace, king, ace, queen, stuff like that. We don't want them to fold ace, queen of clubs, those type of hands that are basically drawing dead to us. So, yeah, don't get too excited. Think about what's the most plus EV play, just not what the first thought that comes to your mind is.
Yeah, so look, I definitely get what Matt is saying here. And the thing is, I mean, it's fine. Look, like you said, you definitely do want to have some calls, right? Because the opponent's sitting here with a lot of nuts in their hands and in their range, and you don't necessarily want to be raising all that often in this scenario. So you always want to have some nuts in your calling range. Question is, what are nuts here? It's like in my mind, I would have thought stuff like King X of hearts and Queen X of hearts and 10X of hearts and 9X of hearts. Like I would like to check call all of those because those doubly block the flush. So like I would not have raised the flushes in this scenario. The question is the best effective straight, right? Because we have the 10 of hearts. Is that essentially good enough to check call? And I bet it probably is, like Matt said. This is a board where I would have presumed for the opponent to bet they're going to have some equity. I mean, how do they not have any equity here, right? I mean, I guess they could just have like king, queen of diamonds or something. But like in my mind, like that's not even a good continuation bet for the opponent, really. So you got to think when they bet they have some equity. So to get them to fold some portion of the time is quite nice. Obviously not with this hand, but with our range. So I don't know. I bet this hand is on the cusp. I bet this is closer than Matt says it is in this scenario. You think your opponent would continuation bet most of the time here? Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe not. I'm actually presenting a class in the very near future. Let me see if I have a spot pulled up. We're going through monotone boards, actually, in just a second. Like right here, 15 big blind. You all can't see it. Sorry, it's not set up for this. 15 big blind, button versus big blind, ace 8-2. You see, you actually are supposed to continuation bet 100%. So maybe it's fine. Button versus big blind 9-4-3. Continuation bet close to 100%. Maybe it's fine. I guess if they're continuation betting 100%, we should be inclined to slow play sometimes, right? So sure. If that's what's happening, then sure. Well, I'll tell you all, I had 7 Matt Affleck quizzes pulled up, and we got through 2 of them. I want to thank you all for giving me good, solid discussion here. What do I think the opponent had? Some garbage. Because if they had the ace of hearts, they'd call it off. If they had the king of hearts, they'd call it off. If they had a jack, they'd call it off. If they had an 8, they'd probably call it off. So they had some garbage. They had king queen or something like that. Maybe like king 10. I don't know. But yeah, pretty cool spot. I think something a lot of people forget is that you always want to make sure you have some nuts in your check calling range. And like I said here, I would have the real good nut. Essentially, you want to take the hands that are the really, really good and not so vulnerable to being outdrawn and call those. So if we had ace X of hearts here, I would definitely call. We do have some king X of hearts, so we'd call those. We do have some queen X of hearts, we'd call those. 10X of hearts, we'd call those. 9X of hearts, we'd call those. And then I probably would have shoved the lower flushes. Like if I had 6-4 of hearts, I'd probably just rip it in. But essentially, Matt's saying here that hand would be a call, saying the 10 would be this 10-9 straight would be a call. And look, that's reasonable. I get it because, like you said, you don't need to build the pot. The thing is, though, is that it's always a disaster when the opponent has something like Queen Jack offsuit. Turn comes a 10, and they don't pay us, or the turn comes a heart, they don't pay us, right? Whereas if we just check shove, we get it all in every time. So, I don't know. I think you can definitely mix it up here. As you think your opponent's continuation betting more and more, you should probably be more inclined to raise, especially with some random bluffs. So if you care about balance, that's relevant. If you check call, turns another heart, opponent shoves, is the 10 of hearts good enough to call it off? Yeah. If you make a 10 of hearts flush on the turn, you're not folding. Okay. Please give you some money. Well, I'll give you some value. Head over right now to pokercoaching.com/Cinco. We have a big discount right now at pokercoaching.com. If you like this quiz, we have over 1,200 of them. We have over 1,200 quizzes at pokercoaching.com that will help you not have to come to my YouTube channel and beg for money. Instead, you can win your own money. There's a lot of value in teaching people to fish. And we make all of you sharks at pokercoaching.com, so make sure you check that out right now at pokercoaching.com/Cinco if you are not already a member. Like we said, over 1,200 quizzes. These quizzes by Matt Affleck are great. He puts you in tough spots, asks you how to play these scenarios that are kind of dicey, as you see. Like you said, both of these were pretty tough scenarios, and tough spots. It's important to make sure you figure out how to play these tough spots, and it's especially important to make sure you're learning how to play shallow stacked very, very well. My next class that's going to go up on Poker Coaching is discussing how to play shallow stacked on monotone boards, because it's tough, especially out of position. So anyway, I want to thank all of you for being here today. Thanks to all the moderators. We have Andrea, Mark, Sean here. All of us are helping out. So thank you all very, very much. We're doing staking through pokercoaching.com. Now that live poker's opening up again, we'll get back on that. We have not bought anyone into tournaments in a few months due to COVID, but I'm going to write a note right here. What we used to do is every month we would basically buy someone into $500 to $1,000 buy-in tournaments, give or take. And, we're happy to keep doing that because I appreciate all of you being members. I appreciate all of you working hard and improving your skills. That's me for today. Good luck. Have fun. Make the most of your experience. I appreciate all of you. Good luck.